सवैया जोत जीते इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं के प्रसाद सुदान करे अक अवगटारा इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं की कृपा पुण्य धाम भरे इन्हीं के प्रसाद सो विद्यालय इन्हीं की कृपा सब सत्य मरे नहीं की कृपा के सजे हम हैं नहीं पोसो गरीब करोड़ मरे
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh, and welcome back to another English episode of the Sikh Renaissance. So, we are reverting back to English this week because the discussion we're having is mostly oriented towards English speakers. This is being done on a request from a long-time listener. And basically, the discussion they had with us orbited around whether Max Arthur Macauliffe, the esteemed one of the esteemed fathers of modern Sikh studies, whether he was actually someone who changed the Sikh identity and separated it from Hinduism, from Sanatan Vedic Hinduism, or whether these are just disingenuous lies manufactured by the Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani. So, as a brief background, let's just remember the fact that Hindus and Muslims and even Christians have been attacking Sikh studies for a long time. We saw this back in the 90s. Harjot Oberoi with his retarded conclusion that Sikh identity is fluid, the Sikhs really did not care about Punjab, and quoting the Sri Gurpant Prakash to this point, conveniently not mentioning the parts where Punk actually does mention the Sikhs praying that Punjab be given to them, for they were its true indigenous people. They were the ones fighting and dying for its liberty. And then we had the Pashora Singh incident, with Dr. Pyar Singh manufacturing a fake Guru Granth Sahib manuscript to start alleging that Guru Arjan changed all the Bani of Guru Nanak because it was too Hinduistic for him. The Sikh Youth Federation in the UK, Ranveer Singh, the author, is quite close with Pashora Singh. So there you go. So we can see how all these individuals who maligned Sikhi are now once again inserting themselves with Sikhs again to start attacks on Sikhs again. So basically, this is something we need to be watching out for. And while each generation throws up its intellectual defenders, unfortunately, it seems that in today's time, we lack our intellectual defenders, or they're still waiting to be found and introduced to the world of Sikh studies. So, Max Arthur Macauliffe was born in 1838 and he died in 1913. So, he was a senior British administrator, a prolific scholar, and author. So, he did a partial translation of the Guru Granth Sahib and Sikh history into English. Now, McAuliffe himself admits that his work, is not perfect and should be taken as an introduction for non Sikh audiences to who the Sikhs are, their beliefs, and a brief background as to how they came to dominate the Punjab. So, Puneet Sahani's basic attack on McAuliffe, Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani's attack, basically, like the Vedas, the Gitas, and the Upanishads teach them to lie. This is exactly what he's been doing. So let's take his critique, just an example of how disingenuous he is. Let's take a critique Sahani has recently given of the Gurbilas Patshahi Dasvi. Now, the work he's using, the work he's actually plagiarizing off, is Surjit Singh Hans's, who recently died. And Hans does have a very interesting analysis of the Gurbilas genre. So, what's actually happening is that Hans is actually reviewing this text, and what he's doing is that what he's saying is there are several ideas which confirm the impression that the author of the Gurbilas Patre Dasvi held heterodox beliefs. In Sikhism, Kali Yuga is an age that makes virtue easy to practice, but the author holds the contrary opinion. Men cannot believe in God, only a few would be redeemed. The Panj Pyares, the five beloved, are held to be the Guru's associates in Satyuga. They joined him again to be a part of the frame of Guru. The writer seems to place the Adi Granth and Puranas almost on the same level. The Guru himself is shown as a worshipper of the goddess at the Naratta festival. Now, what we're seeing down here is that Hans is basically saying there are several ideas which confirm the impression that the author of the Gurbilas Patre Dasvi held heterodox beliefs. These are his words, not our words, right? These can be found in his analysis, and this is available on our Sikh as well. The account has been deleted now, but the work is still up there. So let's continue. Besides doctrinal heterodoxy, Guru Gobind Singh is portrayed paradigmatically as a Hindu incarnation. Guru Gobind Singh's departure from Patna echoes the sentimentalities of Rama leaving Ayodhya for banishment. Images from Ramayana are recurring. Rama killed the demon Ravana with the help of monkeys. In the same way, the Guru gave rulership to the Jats. The Guru takes after Hindu incarnations. He is Vishnu. Makhoval is like Brindaban. Guru Gobind Singh is Krishna. The climax of the Hinduized portrayal of Guru Gobind Singh is reached when Mata Gujri vanishes at the time of her death, like Sita, into the earth. So, the ultimate conclusion which Hans finally gives is that at the end of the day, this work is not related to Gurmat, right? It is not related to Gurmat in any way or form. And this is what he says for the entire Gurbilas genre. Now, what Puneet Sahani has done, he's actually screenshotted and sniped some of these elements, put them together using AI, inserted his words, and he's actually put up a screenshot saying that, hey, look, Sarjeet Singh Hans bol raha hai. Sarjeet Singh Hans is saying that initial Sikhi was heterodox, the Khalsa was heterodox, etc., etc. Now, this is academic plagiarism, and at the worst, it's just academic dishonesty. This is the sort of stuff we expect from Muslims, especially individuals like Daniel Hakikachu, who recently was caught out plagiarizing of several articles, mixing them together using AI to present a new article saying that pedophilia should be allowed, that sex with 9-year-old girls should be allowed in Western society because it is biologically permissible. And he was caught out for this. And this is the same way we can catch out Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani. Now, why did Sahani do this? Now, according to his Sanatan Vedic Hindu beliefs, he's doing this to portray Sikhs as a part of redundant Hinduism. Now, interestingly enough, leading on from there, he goes on to attack Max Arthur Macauliffe. Now, the gist of this attack is that Macauliffe is the one who separated Sikhs from Hindus. And this is very interesting that individuals like Rajiv Kapoor, who's written on Sikhism, politics of separatism, all these Sanatan Vedic Hindu authors, neighbors, friends, they have this inferiority complex that Sikhs are somehow part of their really screwed up, redundant beliefs. That if Sikhs start saying they're not a part of their belief system, that somehow the world is going to end. That bloody turtle they claim, or bull that holds the earth up, that's going to flip over and die, and we're all going to be annihilated in some cosmic agony. But the reality is, if you look at Macauliffe, why Macauliffe was writing, let his work speak for itself. Now, Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani basically goes ahead and claims that in volume 5 of his work, Max Arthur Macauliffe, in his dealings with Sikh literature, that he claims that the British will help the Khalsa rule. And from there he starts making this argument. This is on the Festival of Bharat, another Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist platform, that that Macauliffe gave the Sikhs the 5Ks, he made the Sikh identity in this book, etc., etc., etc. What the Hindus have never been able to explain, and this is also including their retarded 33 million gods belief, the rubbish of the Vedas, that this is real but this isn't real, and all this crap that Adi Shankaracharya came up with regarding the Advaita Vedanta of there being some inscient being that controls existence or has dreamt up this existence. So besides all this rubbish that seems to be Platonic and Greek thought just mixed together and intermixed with Buddhism over time, what they have never been able to explain is how the hell did the community of Sikhs become so easily brainwashed when most of them couldn't even read the English language at the time? And if there were publications in Gurmukhi, how the hell is it that we see no notable Sikh figure at the time raising their voice and saying, wait a minute, this Macauliffe chap is actually brainwashing us or changing our history? Right? The Sikhs were speaking against Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Dayananda Saraswati. They were speaking against Muslim fanatics and rapists going around Punjab trying to convert them. They were battling Christian missionaries more successfully than the Hindus. So why the hell were the Sikhs never able to call out Macauliffe? And what I personally believe is that the Hindus are just jealous that no worthwhile European ever converted to their crap belief system, but you had Macauliffe, a sitting judge and a prominent administrator, convert to Sikhi. And this seems to be at the heart of the matter that let's attack Macauliffe. You have multiple other European historians who wrote on the Sikhs who Macauliffe actually relied upon, but no, let's just attack Macauliffe. Why? Because at the end of the day, his work is prominent, but he also pointed out that even though he had the opportunity to convert to redundant Hinduism, he never did. Now, regarding the separation of identity part, and this is going to be very interesting, this story basically commences with Ernest Trump, right? The missionary Trump. So, Trump now comes into India and he's been sponsored by the Ecclesiastical Mission Society. So he was also a German professor of Oriental languages at the University of Munich and a philologist. So he wanted to convert the natives of Punjab and Sindh to Christianity. So he also worked to translate the Sikh scriptures to help Christian missionaries understand Sikhs and thereby aid their conversion. Now, interestingly enough, Trump makes no secret of the fact that he has a pathological hatred of Hinduism. That if the Hindus do not convert to Christianity, they need to be genocided and wiped out in mass. But it's interesting that the shameless Nathan Vedic Hindu chauvinists of today actually treat him as some god because he basically said, for the first time, that Sikhi is the sword arm of Hinduism. And how this came about was that when Trump was studying the Sikh scripture, he managed to bump into the Nirmalas. And the Nirmalas gave him the view that Ekyonkar, the Ek in Onkar, is a mistake. It's actually Omkara, and all the mentions of Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, all these redundant and retarded deities are actually, ipso facto. So they're not metaphorical, they're actually literal, that the Sikh gurus worshipped these deities. And from there, they introduced him to the crap they have written over time, all the rubbish they had produced until then, until Ranjit Singh and co. And Trump basically set out to answer a question. And that question was, could India's low IQ population, because he considered them animals, could these low IQ animals actually have produced a singular belief system that united everyone around this social cohesion that could allow them to become militarized like the Western nations did with Christianity? Obviously, he was dismissing quite a lot of nuance, that it was the pagan virtue of the early Romans and Germanic tribes that united the white world against the non white world. But as far as he was concerned, the reality for him was that Christianity united Europe and allowed it to start conquering the non European nations. Did the subhuman low IQ Indian population have something similar? So he knew there was Islam, but Christianity was always opposed to Islam because let's face it, to be honest, they do have a point. Islam is just plagiarized of Christianity, Judaism, and Arab paganism, rocks aside. So when it came to the distinct religions of the subcontinent, he realized that the caste system was imposed upon multiple other cults and sects, and from there, the higher caste started controlling the narrative, and they produced something that could be called a monolithic whole called a Hinduism. But this Hinduism was much more cultural than religious in the first place, because its cultural aspect allowed the Hindus to defend their identity, society, and whatever was left or whatever retarded civilization they claimed to be members of. But on the other hand, the religion never gave them the incentive to go out and fight. How could it with crap like Advaita, Vedanta, and all this rubbish of this world being illusion and not real? He was told that why didn't you go and study the Sikhs then? They're conquerors, they're imperialistic religion. Why not go and check them out? So when he goes to the Punjab after the fall of the Sikh Empire, the Nirmalas are out and about, right? They're running around, running the show, because what's happened during this time is the Dharamduja Khara of Mehtab Singh is actually being sponsored by the British. So all the pedophile, rapist Mahant, the Nirmalas Udasis are coming back into Sikhi because at the end of the day, the Akalis, the Nihangs, they have been wiped out. The descendants of the Misl Shaheed, all the Anki Sikhs have either been killed in battlefields or either they have been exiled. So what ends up happening is this Dharamduja Khara comes in. Now here is a monster of Mehtab Singh's own making that a lot of these pundits outside Punjab also start, converting to Nirmala beliefs. At Hazur Sahib, they get massacred en masse by the Hazuri Sikhs because they don't wear the 5Ks. What happens in Punjab then, because now Mehtab Singh is really, really scared, he decides that the Punjabi Nirmalas will wear the 5Ks. But then you have the Nirmalas outside Punjab who are saying, hey, get screwed. We're just going to stick to what we have known for centuries. We're going to keep on practicing redundant Hinduism, and you guys are doing the same, except you guys are wearing the kirpan. We're not going to wear the 5Ks. It's antithetical and against your belief. So there is this conflict happening at the time when Trump enters Punjab. Now, obviously, the Nirmalas in Punjab are wearing white. And if you look at it, Jagjit Singh Harkovalia and Inderjeet Singh Rakabewala, if you read their Jeevnis, these two went to the Nirmalas outside Punjab and they refused to actually allow them to wear the kakars. So these two left and came back and joined the Punjabi Nirmalas. Now, as far as history is concerned, the Nirmalas have no association with Guru Gobind Singh Ji. If we look at the Suraj Prakash, which is one of the Nirmala order's basic canonical texts on Sikh history, Sabinderjeet Singh Sagar pointed out back in the 90s that it is 100% plagiarized off the Bala Janam Sakhi and it bears 100% similarity with the works of the Hindaliyas, who were basically an anti Sikh cult. And if we can actually start studying this, then the origins of the Nirmalas are with the Hindaliyas. And they started coming into the Panthik mainstream after the Sikh massacres by the Afghans. So what ends up happening is now that the Punjabi Nirmalas, they realized that, getting these non-Punjabis in was good. But for a while now, for several decades, we have been actually having a battle with these clowns because the non-Punjabi Nirmalas are setting out to challenge their Punjabi supremacy. So it isn't about Sikh supremacy now. It's basically about Punjabi supremacy versus non Punjabi supremacy. So what ends up happening is that Trump obviously has associations with the non Punjabi Nirmalas, that school of thought. And when in his travels he starts publishing volumes criticizing Sikhi, now this is what happens. His conclusion is that Sikhi is some reaction to external factors. It is not actually a unique religion because the Hindus are too subhuman to produce any meritorious or warranted social cohesion that can allow them to become an imperial force. So Sikhi is just a reaction and it will die out in its own time. Its scripture is redundant because it belongs to the redundant Sanatan beliefs. And if anything, let's convert the Sikhs to Christianity and the Hindus lose their Sodam and the Hindus eventually convert themselves. Right? But there is a problem here. And that problem is basically that in Punjab, there are these so called Sanatan Sikhs who feel that they got screwed over by the non Punjabi Nirmalas. And what happens is they now decide that they have this Sanatan Singh Sabha. Now, the Punjabi Nirmalas are battling it out with the non Punjabi Nirmalas, but at the same time, they have their own little factions going on. So there are the Punjabi Nirmalas who support the non Punjabi Nirmalas and the non Punjabi Nirmalas who support the Punjabi Nirmalas. But then there are the Punjabi Nirmalas who do not support the non Punjabi Nirmalas. And then there are the non Punjabi Nirmalas who do not support the Punjabi Nirmalas. And it is all a total Nirmala Siapa going on at the time. So, what ends up happening now is that the Sanatan Singh Sabha has two strands of thought. And there is the Sanatan Punjabi Nirmalas who are itching for a massive scrap with the non Punjabi Nirmalas. And then there are the non Sanatani Sikh intellectuals. And these Sikh intellectuals, there is a definition that is defining them. They decide that the way we see the world, the way we are writing history, the way we're promoting, preaching Gurbani and Sikhi to the masses, we do not need to rely on these sophisticated, embellished texts and kathas from the past, right? Their time is gone. These things have, evolved. So let's be progressive here and start doing it in a modern vernacular and leave these, highly embellished metaphors of the past to the past. Let's just leave them to the academics and historians. Now, obviously, the Sanatani factions have a bit of a problem here because this is the only world they know. The other thing is that many of these Sanatanis are in this, sabha for their own personal gain. So let's take the Bedis, for example. They have become corrupt. The corrupt Bedis, the corrupt Sodis, they can see that just as people, bow down to Pandits and give them their virgin daughters, they can start enjoying the same benefits as long as they keep on doing the Sanatan Prachar. But their Punjabi sense of dominance, that Sikhi is rooted in Punjab's culture, that there is something in Punjab that makes Sikhi so viable, now that is being offended by these non-Punjabi Nirmalas. So these new non-Punjabi kids on the blocks are chitterprating the old kids. So what happens is Gyani Pratap Singh, who is actually the head of the Sanatan Singh Sabha, and this is what Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani does not admit. Gyani Pratap Singh is actually the one who approaches Macauliffe, who he knows is showing interest in Sikhi and Sikh scriptures, and asks him, well, can you please help us and write a refutation to Trump? And Macauliffe decides, well, why not? I like the Sikhs, they're good chaps, I will help you. Now, what happens is, up till this point, there is a unity of thought, even though there are political schisms and factions beginning to form between the both members of the Sabas, the modernists, and the traditionalists, or the so called traditionalists. But let's give them more accurate terms. The modernists were the true revivalists, and the traditionalists, well, they believed in a redundant form that actually came about only during Maharaja Ranjit Singh's days. So, what happens is everyone sits down together and Macauliffe starts interviewing them for his work. And what he realizes then is that Sikhi has its own form of social cohesion. And that social cohesion is not caste based. वो जातवाद नाल नहीं जुड़ी वो जाति के साथ नहीं जुड़ी है, right? So what happens is then he turns around and starts asking individuals like Avtar Singh Vahira and the others like Yani Pratap Singh, explain something to me. Sukha Singh has written Ugradanti at Patna Sahib, right? Sukha Singh writes, hey Chandi, give me the blessings, give the Panth the blessings to go out there and destroy Hinduism. So why is he actually trying to appropriate a Hindu deity to finish off its own believers? And that's when the truth comes out, as Avtar Singh Vahira explains in his Khalsa Dharam Shastra. And this is why at the Sikh Renaissance we say that even this Sanatani garbage is worth reading, because at the end of the day, many of these fake martial arts masters and nunks like Nadar Singh quote of the Dharam Shastra, but the Dharam Shastra has to be read in context. And what the Dharam Shastra says is that Sikhs are a more supreme form of the Hindus. They are the true heirs of the Indic civilization, and all these deities, Hinduism has weakened the subcontinent. This is Avtar Singh Vahira's conclusion. Even though he believes in caste, he believes in caste as a means of social cohesion and of, preserving his own families, his own lineages, privileges, right? But at the same time, what he's saying is that Hinduism, or what we call Hindu in the religious sense, the Sanatan Vedics, they have corrupted the subcontinent to the point that now all the Muslims are invading and all the Malays, like the Gori, are invading. So, what he is saying essentially, and he explains this, is that Chandi was a Punjabi deity, right? All of Hinduisms, Sanatan Vedic Hinduisms, it's not a monolithic whole, but it's not fluid as well. If it's fluid, it loses its identity. It's actually a means of exploitation. It's a very evil religion. And what it's actually doing is it's going around and forcefully absorbing all these other cults and sects into its framework and then appropriating their deities like it did to the Buddha by saying that Chandi, we want you to destroy Sanatan Vedic Hinduism, what Vahira and his school of Sanatan Sikhs are saying is that we're going to get these deities back, we're going to appropriate them back because they're a part of Punjab's heritage, and through them, we are going to destroy all the Hindus. There is going to be a mass annihilation of all the Hindus. That these festivals, now, obviously, there was a debate between what actually was Punjabi and what wasn't non Punjabi in Sanatan Vedic Hinduism. But you can see this that on one hand, they're saying that they glorify the Vedas because the Vedas come from Punjab. But on the other hand, many like Sukha Singh are saying that the Vedas need to be destroyed. The Quran needs to be destroyed. Hindus need to be destroyed. And all this is going to be done through Chandi. So these individuals, the Punjabi supremacists, Sanatan Sikhs, they saw these deities as being a part of Punjab's heritage. And for them, this was more than Sikh supremacy. This was Punjabi supremacy. So it was Punjabiyat at the top. And one thing that needs to be considered here is that at the end of the day, Sikhs introduced Punjabiyat among the Punjabi Muslims to weaken them. They weaponized Sufism to weaken the Punjabi Muslim association with the fundamentals of Islam in Saudi Arabia. This was done during Nawab Kapoor Singh's days. So then, when we come to Hindus, why wouldn't Sikhs do anything similar? Right? So there was this sense of Punjabi supremacy that if we can pump up the Punjabi Hindus, useless as they are, still, if they stop associating with the other Hindus, they're weak, we can finish them off and we can finish the others off. We can create these schisms, these fractures between their unity and finish them off internally like this. And this is actually what the Sikhs were using at the time. They were exploiting these sentiments. So these texts from Macauliffe reflected this discordant reality that they weren't saying that the Sikhs were Sanatani, but this was more about Punjabi supremacy. And when he dug deeper, he actually found that Sikhi had no relation to Sanatan Vedic Hinduism. The Guru Granth Sahib, basically the Guru's its authors, discredits Sanatan Vedic Hinduism, and Sikhi social cohesion comes from Gurmat and the Khalsa Panth. It couldn't be associated to the caste system, and it couldn't be associated to anything in Islam. So this was the conclusion Macauliffe came up with, and this is why he actually stated that Hinduism is like a boa constrictor. It subsumes all these other faiths which turn up over time. And what it is at the end of the day is that Sikh supremacy and Punjabi regional supremacy could actually somehow allow the Sikhs to regain their statehood and start fighting against the Sanatan Vedic Hindu onslaught. This is what Macauliffe saw. And he actually rebutted Trump's words that there is no such thing as monotheism in Sikhi. There is no such thing as ik in Sikhi. But when he actually corresponded with Trump's associates, they told him that the non-Punjabi Nirmalas basically told him there is no such thing as Ek Onkar. It is only Om. So from this mistake, Trump started doing his works. But when you consider Sikhi in itself, we have a different set of metaphysics and ethics. So these Sanatani texts, such as Avtar Singh Vahira's Khalsa Dharm Shastra, etc., or Kaur Singh's Gurbilas Patre Dasvi, now Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani will have a heart attack when he reads further on about how Hans describes that Kaur Singh actually says that the Sikhs and Muslims will unite and they will manifest Chandi and wipe out all Hindus from existence, all Hindu scriptures from existence. Now, definitely he will have a heart attack, but the reality is that this is a sense of Punjabi supremacy that you appropriated our deities, we're going to get them back. And our, in the sense that our ancestors used to worship them, these deities are born in Punjab, they're a part of Punjab's heritage. Even though the Vedas might be rubbish, they're born in Punjab, they're a part of Punjab's heritage. We're going to snatch all this back and then destroy you. So it wasn't a case of Sikh versus Hindu as more as it was a case of Punjabi versus non-Punjabi. Yes, the Sikh versus Hindu angle was there. Macauliffe saw this. The Sikhs are always going to be hostile to Sanatan Vedic Hinduism because it is a false religion. But at the end of the day, to say that somehow the Sikhs are an aspect of Hinduism is also wrong because their very geographical identity is removed from that of the Hindus. And at the same time, this explains why Sikhi has such differences from the Sanatan Vedic Hindu system. And this was what Macauliffe did. He noted down these observations, and these observations have become the foundations for modern Sikh studies. However, when you have agendas like Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani, then of course you're going to have a problem with Macauliffe and you're going to start attacking him. Did Macauliffe create the separate Sikh identity? Well, this is how why we say that there is a problem with low IQ vegetarians in India, especially among the Sanatan Vedic Hindus. How the hell can Macauliffe's few editions convince a population of over 10 million that they're different from, the rest of their nation? This is something that needs to be considered. And this is where Macauliffe actually laid the foundations for studying the Gurbilas literature further and the Sanatan Sikh literature further, because he noted these disparities in them. And the only way to explain them away, as far as he was concerned in his works, what he mentions is their Punjabi supremacy. That's it. It's a reclamation of Punjab's heritage rather than anything else. Now, obviously, the question here is if coercing existed, because Hans proclaims that coercing might not be real, it's probably someone else writing this text, a non Sikh. But if, say, coercing existed, you know, how do you explain these beliefs? So, this is where we turn to Sabinderjeet Singh Sagar's analysis of the Suraj Prakash and the Nanak Prakash, based on Macauliffe's earlier works. And basically, what he concludes is that this school of thought basically arose from the Hindalyas, and they believed that Vedanta was higher than Gurmat, and Gurmat was the stepping stone to Vedanta. What would have been their personal belief? More or less, it would have been a mixture of Punjabi supremacy, that we're Punjabis, we're supreme than the others, the non Punjabis, and at the same time, they would have enjoyed some benefits such as Vedant and all its caste system propagation to hold their place in society. Otherwise, they would have had their own heterodox beliefs, as Surjit Singh Hans says. And this is the reality. So, when it came to Macauliffe, Macauliffe realized that the heterodox belief section among the Sanatan Sikhs, they were pretty much fighting among each other, right? They couldn't really justify how you're taking a Hindu deity to say, let's go kill all the Hindus. And Ugradanti Sukha Singh is basically saying, Chandi, you arose from the Punjab, you have Singhs. See, now your Singhs are the Sikhs. Let's go kill all the Hindus. Let's go kill all the Muslims. The man's literally talking about a genocide in there. And the reality, though, is how do you take Hindu deities and convince them to genocide their own worshippers? Well, the reality is that this isn't about the Hindu deities, this is about their origination point. And as far as the Sanatan Sikhs at that time, like Avtar Singh Vahira, were concerned, they were the original holders of the Indic civilization, and these were motifs, themes, elements of that civilization which Hinduism or whatever Sanatan Vedic Hinduism was seen as at the time had come along and corrupted and weakened so badly that they had to now kill the Hindus to restore it. And this is the sort of stuff that Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani and all these others will ignore because it doesn't conform to their agenda. This is basically it. So what it really comes down to now is that what happened to the other aspect of the Sangha Sabha, the Lahore Sabha? Well, they realized straight away that at the end of the day, the civilizational narrative, right? The civilizational narrative was really just a way of explaining away some inconsistencies that had crept into the Sikh practices of the 19th century. And really, if you were to go back and restore it, why couldn't you restore the Sikh civilization? And you see echoes of this, principle in the works of Sardar Kapoor Singh and Parsar Prashna. He basically says that Sikhs are the true heirs of the, true Hindu civilization, right? Sikhs are the true heirs of whatever the real Indic civilization was. And if it's to be called Hindu, then it has to be separated from the Hinduism of the Sanatan Vedic Hindus. Right? So, like the Ugradanti says, Sakal Jagat mein Khalsa Panth Gaje, Jage Dharam Hindak Turkan Dand Paje. Now, Hindak means those of the land of the Hindus. So, throughout the world, the Khalsa Panth will roar, and the Hindus and the Muslims will be in flight. And we have Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani saying on April 2024, April 14th, a better translation. Oh, let me do my Indian accent. Call center time. A better translation may be throughout the entire world, the Khalsa sect shall roar, the Dharma of Hindustan shall reawaken, and Turkish Islamic hordes shall be in flight. But the clown he is, Hinduk in no way means Hindu dharma. It's actually an insulting term for Hindus, and this is what Bhai Khan Singh Nabha provides in his Mahan Kosh. Now remember, Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist was actually calling for mass burnings of Bhai Khan Singh Nabha's Mahan Kosh. The reality being, because Bhai Khan Singh Nabha in his Mahan Kosh actually traces the Sanskrit origin of this word, its non Punjabi origin, to come and provide that Hinduk actually means the land of Hindus, a native of the land of Hindus from the land of Hindus. And the Gurmukhi vernacular which Sukha Singh has used basically provides that Hinduk and Turkan are being referred to together. So both of them will be forced to flee. The Khalsa will appropriate everything they have, restore it to its original regional pristinity, and then destroy them through a mass genocide. That is what Sukha Singh is basically concluding. Let's call a spade a spade. He is actually praying for a genocide. So were these Sanatan Sikhs really Devi worshippers? Far as someone like Macauliffe was concerned, not really, as much as it was about them just trolling the Hindus. On the other hand, though, Macauliffe did realize that most of their beliefs were pretty inconsistent when you looked at Sikh doctrine. And what he did was he studied the older Janam Sakhis, he studied the older Rehetnamas, and he basically cited them and came to the conclusion that Sikh social cohesion does not arise from Hinduism or its redundant beliefs, its rubbish beliefs, and this means that the Sikhs in no way are religiously Hindus. Right? What are Hindus at the end of the day? This is something he actually asked. What is Hindu? If it's a religious Hindu, then Sikhs are not religious Hindus. But then you have Maratha sources of the 18th century, and they're asking that from the Attak all the way down to South India, it should be Hindu Padapad Shahi. But Hindu Padapad Shahi is based on the fact that this is the land of Hind, and the natives of Hind are rising up. But it should be recognized that in the land of Hind, there are going to be a lot of different belief systems out there. So to actually argue that somehow a cultural identity, and that too a really retarded cultural identity, is some sort of a alternative for a religious identity, and Macauliffe, a British judge, changed it around and made it garbled and rubbish, that's just retarded. That's purely retarded. And this is why Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani runs away, and he's only hanging around Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist platforms. That's pretty much it. Macauliffe laid the foundations for the defense of Sikh identity. He actually clarified the whole matter, what it really stood at, that at the end of the day, sure, there is some sort of a Hindu culture, but it is a culture of manipulation, exploitation. It has raped the land of Punjab. It has appropriated Punjab's indigenous religions and cultures, much like the Romans did to the Greeks. But the Sikhs are a means of destroying Hinduism and restoring the equilibrium and the peace back to Punjab. And to be able to do this, there are going to be different variations and different thoughts, but there is a unity between both the Sanatan Singh Sabha and the non Sanatan Singh Sabha that Sikhi is distinct from Hinduism. It is much better than Hinduism, except that the Sanatanis, in one way or the other, are split among themselves as to what they actually are. They want to enjoy the caste privileges while shitting on Hinduism and saying that its deities that originated from Punjab will empower them to go and destroy the Hindus in a mass genocide, while the Lahore Singh Sabha, the revivalists, they couldn't give two craps about it, and they believe that at the end of the day, if you're distinct from the Hindus, leave all this poetic crap aside, say it right to their face, we are not Hindus, we are going to convert your people to our religion and make them better. And really, that's all it is. But we are indulging in these retarded, pseudo intellectual, neo scholarly shenanigans. And at the end of the day, we just end up, claiming that individuals like Macauliffe, who were the ones who provided the foundations for Sikh, studies, are somehow or the other responsible for creating these fractures and divisions. In reality, the Sanatan Vedic Hindus are jealous that no worthwhile individual, a non-Indian individual, ever converted to their retarded belief system. And as far as the Sikhs are concerned, Macauliffe converted or not converted, it doesn't matter. He actually provided a really nuanced and modernist perspective of the Sikh identity. And this was rooted in the truth, rather than, claiming that he made up all this stuff like, oh, Macauliffe ne panch kakar bana ke ino ko diye the. Macauliffe made up the 5 kakars and gave them to the Sikhs. Oh my god, I need to go crap on the streets. All this rubbish they're selling is just to weaken the Sikhs. And unfortunately, the Sikh studies that are happening in our universities, like Jawaharlal Singh with the Sarblo Granth, there are 33 different manuscripts of the Sarblo Granth, and none of them agree with each other. And with the Guru Granth Sahib, as Dr. Balwant Singh Tillo points out in the early Sikh scriptural tradition, there is a standardization. Do you really think Guru Gobind Singh Ji would have made a Granth and then said, oh yeah, let's not standardize it, anyone can have different compositions, and it baad ch ladde ladde apne aap faisla kar loge ki ya ki nahi, right? So all these concepts and notions need to be thought about and restudied from time to time. Obviously, the Sanatani rubbish, the Sanatani Sikh rubbish, is a part of our heritage, but it actually shows underlying currents of tension. The first tension is the Nirmalas of Punjab versus the Nirmalas outside Punjab. We can still use those fractures to start destroying them because they are a false cult attaching themselves to Sikhi. On the other hand, we can also use the works of scholars like Macauliffe and the sources he cites, especially the Sanatan Sikh sources, to start hitting the Sanatani identity, because what it proves is that at the end of the day, the Sanatani identity is based on plagiarism and nothing conducive or original. This is a reality that we need to be actually considering down here. And there is a little story associated here. If someone remembers Wendy Doniger's book on Hinduism, which and the Hindus, an alternative history, when the Congress was in power in the early days of BJP, I think, the Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorists of India actually had this book banned. But it makes the same argument as Macauliffe, and I do believe from what I've heard, she uses Macauliffe as a source, that Hinduism is a forced imposition, a unity of different, diverse, regional belief systems, and ultimately it will dissolute and dissolve over time. And this dissolution and dissolving was what the Sanatan, the Punjabi Sanatan Sikh literature of the 19th century and the early 20th century shows. So, at the end of the day, Macauliffe was the one who came and exposed these cracks, and that's really good for us because now we can start using these cracks to start launching our intellectual attack on Hinduism and try converting the best among them to the truth of Sikhi. Because the ultimate reality is, at the end of the day, that the attacks they launch on Sikhi to claim Sikhi had their fluid identity, etc., all that rubbish, all that garbage, all that shit is actually what they have. And all we need to do is just reflect their tactics back on them. So that's all for today. Until next time, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
सवैया दुध जीते इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं के प्रसाद सुदान करे अक अवगटार इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं की कृपा पुण्य धाम भरे इन्हीं के प्रसाद सो विद्यालय इन्हीं की कृपा सब सत्य मरे नहीं की कृपा के सने हम हैं नहीं पोसो गरीब